December 1944. A frozen road approaches Bastogne, Belgium. Gray mist hangs heavy over the snow-covered pine trees. A single American Sherman tank moves south along the deserted lane. It bears the White Star insignia of the 10th Armored Division. Everything looks normal. Then, the machine slows at a quiet road junction. 4 men emerge from the rear hatch. They wear American winter uniforms. But look closer. Their boots are wrong. Heavy German steel hobnails crunch into the Belgian snow instead of quiet American rubber soles. Through binoculars, a forward observer stares at the rolling chassis. The road wheels are arranged in pairs. This is not a Sherman. It is a deadly German Panther tank painted in stolen colors. When General George S. Patton receives the report, he will unleash a swift hunt that proves no amount of paint can hide the true shape of steel. This is the remarkable story of what happened when German officers disguised a heavy Panther tank as an American Sherman, and how General Patton unmasked the deception instantly by looking at the wheels. Before we continue with this battlefield hunt, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We tell the vital World War II stories that prove how the right question kills the wrong cover. Major Eleanor Stone was 34 years old, from Boston, Massachusetts, serving with the Counterintelligence Corps attached to 3rd Army Headquarters. Her younger brother had died on the burning deck of the battleship Arizona at Pearl Harbor, a sudden family tragedy that drove her to enlist the very next week. She had spent 2 grueling years in the dust of North Africa and the mud of Sicily analyzing broken enemy codes and tracking down behind-the-line saboteurs. She had seen the ruined towns and the shallow graves of young men. That relentless work taught her that every deception leaves a thin thread waiting to be pulled. She learned to ignore the grand gestures and look only at the small, mismatched details that desperate men always forget when they try to hide their tracks. On this freezing December morning, a strange radio report about a lone, suspicious vehicle moving toward Bastogne landed directly on her desk. Oberleutnant Klaus Müller was 28 years old, an arrogant Panzer commander from Stuttgart, leading this highly classified disguised armor operation. He believed completely in the total superiority of German tactical cunning, frequently telling his men that the soft, comfortable Americans would always believe whatever their eyes were shown. He wore a finely tailored wool uniform stolen from a captured American captain, though he refused to part with his pristine, custom-made German leather boots. He carried a silver pocket watch taken from a dead prisoner and looked down on the common infantrymen fighting in the cold. His mission was to penetrate deep behind the vulnerable American lines, destroy vital supply convoys, and spread raw panic across the frozen Ardennes sector. He moved through the mist with absolute confidence, certain that his wall of stolen paint and false white stars would protect him from any American scrutiny. The German army had just launched its massive winter counteroffensive through the frozen forest of the Ardennes. It was a final, violent gamble to split the Allied lines and seize the vital port of Antwerp. Thousands of German troops threw themselves against thin American positions, creating a deep, dangerous bulge in the winter front line. Heavy snow, thick ground fog, and freezing temperatures grounded Allied aircraft, leaving the ground forces to fight a brutal battle in a blinding white wasteland. Communication lines were cut, units were isolated, and retreating columns choked the narrow, icy roads. Total tactical panic was the primary objective of the German High Command. In this extreme chaos, special German units dressed in captured winter jackets and driving-altered equipment operated deep behind the lines to disrupt rear operations. They changed road signs, cut vital telephone wires, and misdirected entire American reinforcement columns into deadly ambushes. Many American officers, overwhelmed by the sheer speed of the enemy advance, accepted Allied markings at face value. They waved single vehicles through strategic checkpoints without checking credentials, looking at footwear, or inspecting vehicle chassis shapes. The urgent, desperate pressure to move heavy ammunition and wounded men made thorough inspection look like a luxury they could not afford. Stolen white stars became a cheap, perfect shield for German killers in the frozen woods. Allowing disguised units to roam free, the enemy had prepared 3 of these heavy, altered tanks to penetrate the rear lines and strike at vulnerable command posts. These enemy crews spoke fluent English, carried forged military papers, and relied entirely on the haste of their targets to escape detection. But this specific vehicle was now slowing down, as it approached the quiet road junction outside Bastogne. Captain Arthur Higgins, 32, from Philadelphia, 10th Armored Division, stood by a frozen timber roadblock. He had lost his hearing in his left ear during the heavy mortar fire at St. Lo, but his eyes were sharp. He stepped directly into the icy path of the lone Sherman tank and raised his right hand to flag it down. The heavy machine squealed to a halt in the freezing gray slush. The commander in the turret leaned over the steel rim. "Kill your engine right now, Captain," Higgins said. "We are on an urgent tactical reconnaissance mission for high command," Mueller replied in perfect English. "I still need to see your written movement orders," Higgins said. "We do not have time for petty administrative paperwork out here," Mueller said. "Standing regulations require a signed trip ticket for all isolated vehicles," Higgins said. "The entire front is collapsing today, and you want a piece of paper," Mueller said. "Those are the exact security orders from our division command," Higgins said. "Your panic division command is currently in total chaos," Mueller said. "State your specific unit and final destination," Higgins said. "Company B, 11th Tank Battalion, heading for the rear," Mueller said. "That unit is currently operating 10 miles to our west," Higgins said. "We were cut off and separated during the night retreat," Mueller said. "Step down from the hull right now so I can verify your credentials," Higgins said. "I do not take orders from a lower-ranking checkpoint guard," Mueller said. "Sir, you will step down immediately or I will call the military police," Higgins said. Mueller sneered, his gloved fingers tightening on the metal hatch rim. "You soft, pathetic Americans are obsessed with bureaucratic forms while a superior race claims the battlefield. Your mongrel army cannot comprehend the speed of our movement. Out of my way, or I will run your little wooden gate down." Higgins kept his face neutral, but his eyes dropped down to the commander's feet. Beneath the loose American wool trousers, heavy steel hobnails glinted against the wet tank hull. "No American soldier wore boots like that. Wait here while I clear the barrier," Higgins said. "Make it quick," Mueller snapped. Higgins walked back to the timber command post, his heart hammering against his ribs. He grabbed the heavy field telephone and bypassed the local network. He rang Major Stone directly to describe the strange road wheels, the German boots, and the arrogant rant. Stone rushed to the crossroads, snapping a series of grainy photographs before the vehicle pulled away into the mist. The report reached Patton within the hour. Patton's jeep pulled up to the icy crossroads. 4 stars gleamed on his helmet. The famous ivory-handled revolvers rested on his hips. He stepped out into the freezing mud, unannounced and completely calm. Every soldier at the checkpoint snapped to absolute attention. Patton did not raise his voice, but his cold presence filled the road. Patton walked directly to the side of the painted tank and looked up at the German commander. "Son, what kind of vehicle are you operating today?" Patton asked. "An American Sherman M4, General," Mueller said, maintaining his cover. "And what division do you belong to?" Patton asked. "The 10th Armored, sir," Mueller answered. "Then explain why your chassis has 6 paired road wheels with a German torsion-bar suspension," Patton asked. Mueller froze, looking down from the turret. "It is a modified field variant, sir." "You are a liar," Patton said softly. "You are an enemy infiltrator wearing a dead man's uniform." Patton studied the painted steel. "You thought our soldiers were blind. You believed that a few gallons of olive drab paint and a white star would hide a 35-ton German Panther. You relied on our haste and our chaos to slip through our lines and slaughter unsuspecting men from behind. You thought your clever disguise made you superior to the men holding this road. But you forgot one fundamental fact of warfare. A coat of paint cannot alter the heavy iron geometry of an engineer. The German designers built this chassis with overlapping wheels. They built it to carry a German gun. No brush, no matter how skilled, can change the physics of a suspension system. Your deception was dead the moment your tracks hit the snow. Our own Major Stone has already analyzed your movements. We know you have 2 other disguised Panthers operating in this sector. I am giving you one single binary choice right now. You will pick up your radio and order those other 2 tanks to surrender immediately. Or you can climb back inside your painted box and face the direct consequences of your choices. Decide in the next 10 seconds. Mueller glared down at the general, his jaw tight with stubborn Prussian pride. He refused to speak. He slowly reached down and slammed the heavy steel hatch shut from the inside, sealing himself within the stolen armor. Patton turned his back without a single word. Lieutenant Colonel Reynolds waved his arm, and two hidden M10 tank destroyers gunned their engines. Emerging from the snowy tree line, the American armor took up flanking positions around the isolated road junction, their long barrels tracking the painted Panther. Inside the steel hull, Muller tried to throw the gears into reverse, the tracks churning uselessly against the thick slush. The first 3-inch armor-piercing shell blasted through the side armor extension with a deafening metallic roar. Thick black smoke choked the air, smelling of burning oil and cordite. Checkpoint guards scrambled behind frozen sandbags. Watching the trap close, Muller's crew managed to fire one erratic round into a snowbank before a second American shell struck the engine compartment, sparking a violent explosion. Metal groaned under the intense heat. Within 6 minutes, the disguised tank was a burning, twisted wreck. The false white stars peeled and blistered under the roaring flames. Stone and Reynolds watched in silence as the black smoke drifted over the Belgian pines, a public testament to the price of a failed deception. The threat of the first Panther was completely extinguished, and the hunt for the remaining 2 hidden targets was already moving forward under Patton's strict orders to eliminate the threat entirely. Before fall, Major Eleanor Stone returned to her quiet home in Boston after the global conflict finally ended, completing her distinguished service with the Counterintelligence Corps in late 1945. She lived a peaceful life as a dedicated high school history teacher, never boasting to her students about her vital wartime achievements, and passed away quietly in 1994. She kept a small, jagged piece of the charred metal from that destroyed Panther tank on her oak study desk for the rest of her days, a silent reminder that sharp vigilance always conquers the cleverest enemy lies. Oberleutnant Klaus Muser's remains were eventually recovered from the burned steel wreck and buried under a simple stone marker in a military cemetery in western Germany. For 40 long years, the true, deceptive nature of his final battlefield mission remained buried deep inside classified American intelligence files, leaving his family in Stuttgart to believe he had merely fallen in standard combat. In 1985, his adult grandson discovered the declassified operational files, later traveling to the quiet Belgian crossroads to place a wreath where an arrogant gamble had met its violent end. General Patton never spoke publicly about the painted German armor, but he made a detailed, analytical entry in his private diary that very night. He wrote that while the enemy camouflage painters did excellent work mimicking the star insignia, they could never alter the fundamental engineering choices of a factory chassis. His final note concluded with the firm observation that the iron mathematics of structural design will always favor the observer who looks past the paint. Some historians have argued that Patton took an unnecessary personal risk by confronting the disguised German crew directly at an unsecure crossroads, instead of ordering an immediate, distant strike. Others have argued that his immediate, aggressive presence prevented a wider tactical panic and forced a swift resolution before the enemy could slip away into the dark forest. What is certain is that the specific technique of wheel pattern recognition became a foundational piece of armored identification training at Fort Knox, establishing a practical battlefield lesson that remains a core part of military instruction even today. If you had been in Patton's position, would you have confronted the tank directly, or would you have ordered a safer artillery strike from a distance? Let us know in the comments, and if you want more stories about how the right question kills the wrong cover, make sure to subscribe.